Are you looking for the best low-carb breads to try? Then stay tuned, because today I am sharing with you my top picks for low-carb breads and revealing what are the best bread choices for people who have diabetes. Hey everybody, Erin here with Healthy Mom, Happy Family, and I am so excited to have you join me today. Now, if you have diabetes, you have probably been told at least once that you need to avoid bread altogether. And honestly, that's kind of a silly recommendation because bread is not the only carbohydrate containing food out there. So I don't know why it always gets such a bad rap. And I have so many clients that have diabetes that have to give up bread and feel like, they're missing out on something that they love. So I'm here to set the record straight and tell you that you do not have to give up bread just because you have diabetes. But I do want you to realize that not all breads are created equal, right? So just because bread's not off limits doesn't mean that we can't look at what are the better options to choose. And there are reduced carbohydrate breads out there, there's low carb bread options out there, and many of them taste really great and are also a great choice for people with diabetes because they won't spike your blood sugar as much as a slice of white bread that can send blood sugar skyrocketing. The other thing is they actually taste good too. So what I wanted to do today was to really put this video together to kind of get rid of those myths around bread so you know that you can actually eat bread when it comes to diabetes, and to share with you what are the best choices for bread when it comes to low carb breads, but also breads that really work for diabetes management and blood sugar management. So today I am sharing my top picks for low carb breads and what to look at when you're choosing them as well. Now, before we dive in, I just want to remind you that if you are actively trying to manage type 2 diabetes or trying to prevent developing type 2 diabetes, I would love for you to subscribe and join my channel so you never miss new tips or tricks or recipes. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and that way you will always know when a new recipe video comes out or a new tip or a new trick to managing diabetes. All right, so in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you what you need to look at to know if a bread is actually a good choice for diabetes management. Because like I mentioned, no two breads are the same, but not every bread is created equal. So some definitely can send blood sugar through the roof and others won't. So I'm going to show you what you need to look at. And then I'm also going to share with you my top picks for low carb breads that you really want to try right now. Just so you know, I'm going to be linking to each of these breads in the description below so you can check them out, you can look at the ingredient list, and you can see where to purchase them. Right? And then we're also going to be talking about how to incorporate bread into a diabetes meal plan so you really can eat what you love while still keeping your blood sugar in check. Right, so if you love bread, if you love sandwiches, if you love French toast, I'm here to tell you don't have to give it up. I'm going to show you how to enjoy it. Okay, so let's first talk about how to choose a bread that is good for diabetes management and blood sugar. Because like I said, not all breads are created equal, and that is especially true when it comes to blood sugar management if you have diabetes. So there are definitely a few really important things to consider when you are looking at breads and you're deciding, what type of bread to try or to purchase. So I'm going to have to go through them with you because I really want you to find a bread that you enjoy and that tastes great, but that also is a really great match for you when it comes to meeting your carbohydrate goals and your blood sugar goals as well. So when it comes to choosing breads, there's a couple of things you really have to focus on. And the very first thing we need to look at is carbohydrate, right? Because carbohydrate is what's going to directly impact blood sugar. So when you're looking at a lower carb bread or a low carb bread, really any bread for that matter, what you want to look at is the nutrition facts panel on the label. Okay, this is going to give you a lot of insight into the food. So when you look at this nutrition facts panel, what you're going to see is the total carbohydrate. And this includes the total amount of carbohydrate in the bread, including things like fiber and other sugars. Now, when you're looking at this, what I want you to remember is that serving size matters. So you'll see for a lot of breads, a serving size is a slice. That's pretty much the most common. But sometimes, especially with some of the low carb breads out there, a serving size will be 2 slices. So keep that in mind. Look at the total carbohydrate, but also look at what that means when it comes to serving size as you're reviewing the label. Now, total carbs also include fiber, and this is a type of carbohydrate that you're not actually able to digest. So including high fiber foods is really a great way to help with blood sugar management, since fiber actually helps to slow down the absorption of glucose and helps to regulate blood sugar. Now, when it comes to choosing low carb breads, or really any bread that's going to help you manage diabetes, look for breads that have at least 3 grams of fiber or more per serving. That's considered a good source of fiber, and also your best bet to really make sure that that bread choice is going to help manage your blood glucose levels in the best way possible. Now, when we're talking about fiber, another benefit of fiber is that it really helps to lower the net carbs, or the carbohydrates that impact your blood sugar when we're looking at bread. So when you're looking at the food label and you see total carbs, remember this includes fiber, but we can't digest fiber. So what net carbs are they're really taking the total carbohydrates, subtracting out the fiber, the carbohydrates that you can't digest, and showing you how many carbs are actually going to impact your blood sugar levels. So when we look at low carb breads, oftentimes you'll see they label their net carbs. This is the total carbohydrate minus the fiber. Now, if there's sugar alcohol in the bread, they'll also subtract this out from the net carbs. Now, this is a little bit more of a gray area because some sugar alcohols have no impact on blood sugar, where some are partially digested, so they can have a mild impact. So I do encourage you when you're looking at net carbs that if a product does have a large amount of sugar alcohols, to consider that some of those sugar alcohols may in fact impact blood sugar. And so it's good to take that into account when you're figuring out the total carbohydrate impact of that bread. Okay, so to give you an example of what net carb means, let's say we have a bread and it says there's 20 grams of carbohydrate per serving, but it's also saying that there's 10 grams of fiber. So we would take those 20 grams of total carb, we'd subtract out the 10 grams of fiber, and that leaves us with 10 net carbs, or carbs that are going to have a direct impact on blood sugar. Now, if we were to compare that to a slice of bread that had 15 grams of total carbohydrate, but only 2 grams of fiber, you would see that that bread, even though the total carbohydrates were lower, it actually has 13 grams of net carbs, and it might have a slightly bigger impact on blood sugar. So that's the benefit of looking at not just total carbs, but also the fiber and the net carbs as well. Now, when it comes to know how many carbs is too much when it comes to bread, there's really no one answer for that, because this really depends on your personal blood sugar goals and the meal plan guidelines provided to you by your diabetes care team, as well as what else you're eating with that bread at the meal. If you're having the bread by itself, you have more flexibility with the amount of carbohydrate versus if you're eating it with another source of carb. Now, as a general rule of thumb, to give you some guidelines, an average slice of bread contains about 15 grams of digestible carb. So when we're looking at lower carb breads, I would recommend looking for a bread that has 10 grams or less of net carb per serving. Obviously, lower is going to have even less of an impact on blood sugar, but when we're talking about a bread that's a little bit more diabetes friendly and a little lower in carb, 10 grams of net carb or less is a pretty good guideline to look at. Now, when it comes to choosing low carb bread, I do want you to focus on not just the grams of carbohydrate, but also the ingredients, because these really matter. Not all low carbohydrate breads are equal, and the ingredients that they use can have a direct impact on your health. So you want to look for bread not just lower in carbohydrate, but also one that contains high quality ingredients that could potentially benefit your own health. Now, the way to review this and to know what ingredients are in the food is to look at that nutrition label and look at ingredients. The first ingredient is what makes up the majority of the food. So you want to make sure that those first few ingredients are really high quality ingredients that are going to be beneficial for health. And one of the best things to look at when we think about breads is to look for a source of whole grains. Now, if you're looking at bread packaging, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming and confusing because marketing terms like whole grain or whole wheat can be labeled on the bread product. But it doesn't always necessarily mean the product itself is 100% whole grain. The only way to know that is to look at the ingredient list. Now, if you're choosing a grain-based bread product, something made with flour and something like, with wheat or oat, you do want to look for 100% whole grain. And you can tell this by looking at that nutrition label and seeing that the first ingredient is 100% whole grain. We don't want to find a bread that says wheat bread, but the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour. That's a refined grain, and it's going to cause your blood sugar to rise more rapidly. You're also losing out on some essential nutrition and some fibers in that as well. So we want to look at that first ingredient and see that that ingredient is a source of whole grain. Usually you can identify that because it'll have the word whole in front of it, Or if a product is labeled as 100% whole grain, that's an actual standard it has to meet in order to use that label. So if you see a product labeled 100% whole grain, you can feel good knowing that you're getting a whole grain choice. Okay, so I talked to you about what to look for when it comes to breads. Now I'm going to share with you my top choices for low carb breads and lower carb breads for people with diabetes. So the first bread choice I want to talk about is what's called BFree brown seeded sandwich loaf. Now this is a great bread choice because per serving you're only getting 6 grams net carbs. Now this is a seeded sandwich bread and it's actually free of gluten, it's free of dairy, it's free of soy, and it's also vegan. So if you have any allergies or dietary restrictions, this is a really great choice for you. Now one of the things I love about this bread is not only does it have 6 grams of fiber per serving, it also has 4 grams of protein. So it's low in carb, but it's also going to really help you to stay full and satisfied. Now each slice is about 100 calories, which is pretty average for bread, but if you're looking for a low carb bread that is also lower in calories, this might be a little bit higher depending on what your calorie need, your goals are, and as well as how many slices you want to have at one serving. Ezekiel bread sprouted whole grain bread is a really great choice too. Now this bread is a little bit higher with 12 grams of net carb, but one of the things I absolutely love about this bread for people with diabetes is that it's made from freshly sprouted organic grains and legumes. So it's a really delicious bread, but it can also offer a good variety of health benefits. And that's because sprouted grains themselves can help you to absorb more nutrients, and they do this because they break down the natural phytate, which is a nutrient that can block the absorption of some beneficial vitamins and minerals, things like iron and vitamin C. Now, sprouted grains are also great because they're more easily digestible, so you might find that your stomach can better tolerate a bread like this than breads that are made with non-sprouted grains. So this bread is great because you have sprouted grains, you get plant-based protein. Each slice gives you 80 calories and 5 grams of protein. So it's really going to be satisfying. In addition, you're getting a good source of fiber. Another bread I love recommending is the Dave's Killer bread, the Power Seed thin sliced bread. Now this only has 9 grams of net carb, and one of the ways they get the carbs lower is it is very thin sliced. So you are getting a thin bread, but it's really packed full of texture and nutrition. The texture is coming from the whole grains, there's ground flax in it, so you're getting a plant-based omega-3 fatty acids, you're getting a good amount of fiber, and you're getting protein. So there's a lot of benefits to this bread, and I would highly recommend it. Just keep in mind that it is thin, so if you like a thicker bread, this might not be the right one for you. But otherwise, I think it's a great choice. Another low carb bread I love is the Angelic Bakehouse's 7 grain whole grain bread. This one's terrific. Now it has 14 grams of net carbs, so a little bit on the higher end when we're talking about low carb bread, but it's still right within the guidelines when we talk about breads that are appropriate for people with diabetes. You're getting 7 grains together here. These are sprouted grains, things like quinoa, oat groats, and barley, and rye berries. So a lot of variety, a lot of whole grains, and a lot of fiber. So you know it tastes great, plus you're getting health benefits as well. Now, if you love sweet bread, Base Culture Keto Bread, the cinnamon raisin flavor is terrific. 6 grams of net carb, great way to satisfy your sweet tooth or use in recipes like French toast if you want to do that in the morning. So I really do encourage you to try this bread if you're somebody who likes more of a sweet variety. Maybe not the best choice for sandwiches with the sweeter flavor, but terrific when you're thinking about dessert type breads. Now, if you want very low carb, the Sola Golden Wheat Low Carb Sandwich Bread has only 2 grams of net carb. So a great choice for those who really want very few carbohydrate when it comes to bread. Now the only downside potentially to this bread, I don't think it's a downside, but for some people, is it is sweetened with stevia, so it has a little bit of a slighter taste, and you're getting about 70 calories per slice. So to me personally, I think the taste is great and I don't have a problem with it, but some people don't necessarily like the sweeter taste, so something to consider when you're thinking about this bread choice. One other consideration with this bread too is it does contain some sugar alcohols. Now for many people, it's not a high amount, they tolerate this fine, but if you are sensitive to sugar alcohols or they ever cause digestive distress, then it's something to consider before choosing this bread. So what's the bottom line when it comes to bread and diabetes? Well, as you can see, bread is definitely not off limits. And there are so many bread companies out there that make low carb bread options and blood sugar friendly options. You can still eat what you love while keeping your blood sugar levels in check. Now just remember, if you are choosing a low carb bread, make sure to read those labels. Look at the total carbs, the fiber, the net carbs, along with the ingredient list. And then of course, make sure to pick a variety that not only works for your blood sugar goals and your health goals, but also one that you actually enjoy the taste of too. Now I'm linking to all the brands that I mentioned below. Also, I am going to put the link to my blog post where I give even more of my favorite low carb bread options. So you can click on that and check out even more options that you might enjoy. There are an incredible amount of low carb breads and diabetes friendly bread options out there for you. So you definitely don't have to give up bread if you love it, and you can still enjoy it while achieving your blood sugar goals. So I want to hear from you. Are there certain low carb breads that you really enjoy? Let me know in the comments below, and tell me if there's some new breads on this list that you're trying. I'd love to hear from you and see what you think. Okay, so don't forget to check those out. Click the links below to see all of those low carb bread options. And if you like today's video, I would love for you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss new tips, tricks, or recipes. Thanks so much for joining me today.